When my daughter got home from a Christmas party at her grandparents' house, she was in tears. She looked upset as she quietly gave me a wrapped gift. "Look at this, Mom," she asked. "Why do I have to go through this?" I didn't know what to say. As soon as I opened the package, I knew it wasn't right. As a child, I instantly called the police to report what happened, which led to the gift giver's actions being made public and causing chaos. This event caused a lot of trouble in the family, and the person who did it had to deal with harsh results. I started a new job at age 34 after a rude comment from a previous boss. I am now 45 years old, and my younger husband works for the same company. At my current job, skills are more important than age or gender, and my husband, who was my boss at the time, was very supportive. We got married right away and now have a sweet fourth-grade daughter who loves to read and is kind to everyone. However, I don't get along well with my husband's sister. Even though I get along well with my in-laws, she doesn't like that I'm older than my husband and makes fun of how quickly we got married. It hurt to hear her say mean things about my age and the changes in my body from being pregnant, but I tried to keep my cool for my own peace of mind. Her attitude only changed after she had a quick wedding and moved away, which cut down on our time together and stopped her from making fun of me. This change lets me focus on getting ready to meet our daughter. Even though giving birth was hard, the birth of our daughter was a happy event in our lives that cleared the sadness that had been affecting our happiness. During the birth of our daughter, it was very important for me to have my husband's steadfast support and positive words. When she cried for the first time in the delivery room, his thanks and appreciation for my work made us both cry tears of joy. But 5 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a boy and started coming to our house again. Each visit took an hour. Her goal seemed to be to make negative comparisons between our kids and to say mean things about my age, which made my daughter feel bad. She said it was clear from the lines she said were on my daughter's face compared to her child's smooth skin. Her brazenness astounded me as I was adjusting to being a parent for the first time. She wouldn't bring any baby necessities with her, but she would leave with diapers and formula, saying she didn't want to run out. This action really confused me. It seemed like the main reason she came was to put me down and then take goods, like it was her right. Because of her husband's job, they had to move to a different state, so she stopped visiting. This brought some peace for a short time, until our daughter started grade school and found out that her cousin was also there. Even though our family relationships were tense, our daughter and her cousin became close friends. She took care of him because she was older, nicer, and more honest. He became well-liked by his friends. They were in the same class by the 3rd grade, and my daughter got praise for a reading review she did over the summer. It was even printed in the local newspaper. Family and friends were talking about this accomplishment, especially when I visited my in-laws. A lot of family members got together this time, maybe because my daughter got an award. But my sister-in-law seemed uneasy about the attention our family was getting. A woman claimed that it was unfair and said the famous book was meant for her son, even though the kids had already read both books and agreed to trade them. The fact that they chose which book report to write together was a team effort that my nephew liked. This event showed how the kids could share and help each other, which was very different from the adults' arguments and confusion. My nephew really liked the book my daughter read first, so she was kind and let him pick it out. When I told my sister-in-law this story, she wrongly thought I wrote the award-winning reflection for my daughter. She may have remembered that I liked writing books in college, which she probably got from my husband and didn't tell me. She was also spreading lies at school about me, saying that I had used my personal ties with the competition judges to give my daughter's entry an unfair edge. The spread of these false charges made my daughter so sad that she stopped enjoying reading, which she used to really enjoy. For me, this was the last blow. I couldn't stand to see her so down, both because of the lies being spread about me and because she was the target of mean-spirited rumors. I told my husband about his sister's mean behavior toward me for the first time since we got married before I did anything else. This included taking clothes meant for our daughter, saying mean things about my looks while I was pregnant, and comparing me to a sumo wrestler because she thought babies couldn't tell the difference between gender-specific clothes. My husband agreed that it was time to involve his parents because he was so angry about his sister's behavior. He insisted on telling my sister-in-law about the problem in person, so he went to her house with his parents. Her initial happiness at having her family visit out of the blue quickly turned to shock when my husband gave her a harsh warning. When she was called out, she got angry and blamed me for exposing her to her favorite brother. By making herself the victim, she was trying to avoid taking responsibility. At first, I returned her calls because I thought she was trying to make things right. But it turned out she was just venting her anger. In the end, I set her phone number to go straight to voicemail, so when she tried to call, I didn't answer. I thought at first that she had lost interest when the calls stopped after a few weeks. It turned out that wasn't the reason, though. My in-laws hosted their first ever children's Christmas party in December, which made me wonder why they chose that month. No matter what, my daughter was thrilled to be asked. She remembered the fun Christmas party she had in kindergarten and hoped for something similar at her elementary school, but they couldn't hold one because of their policy on religious events. I'd often wonder why people have to strictly follow faith traditions when Christmas has become a holiday that people all over the world love and celebrate in their own unique ways. I've been noticing that some parents are very careful to keep their faith in mind when they talk about their kids. My daughter and I have celebrated Christmas quietly at home for the past 2 years, choosing to enjoy the holiday in our own unique way. She really liked the gift swap, which was one of the best parts of our party. This year, my in-laws offered a straightforward budget of $11 for a gift exchange at their Christmas party. My daughter and I went on a little trip to a nearby huge shopping mall to look for the right gift. She finally chose one of her favorite picture books because she wanted to tell someone else about the story and how much it made her happy. On the day of the party, she left with the gift and went to my in-laws' house, which was only a short bus ride from our house. After telling my mother-in-law that she was coming, she offered to pick her up from the bus stop. Later, she called to let me know that my daughter had arrived safely, which temporarily eased my fears. But the peace didn't last long. After only 50 minutes, the sound of the front door opening on a weekday caught me off guard. My husband was at work, and I was working from home while my daughter was on winter break. The scene I saw when I got there broke my heart. My daughter crying by the door. She gave me a gift-wrapped bag that looked like the things inside would make sense of everything. I found a scary card written in red ink inside the bag, along with a newspaper with her reading reflection torn into pieces. The card warned us not to be too cocky, or we might end up like the mutilated stuffed animal inside the bag, which was cut up and stained with red ink to look like blood. This upsetting act was not at all a harmless joke. When my daughter informed me that my sister-in-law had made this ominous gift, I was shocked. People agreed that adults would not bring gifts to the party because it was supposed to be a happy, kid-focused event. Still, even though I wasn't going with my daughter to the party, I was shocked to find out that my sister-in-law was there and did something horrible to my daughter. If my mother-in-law knew that her daughter was there, she would have told me because she always asked that we tell her about any problems her daughter caused. This misunderstanding upset me and showed that someone was trying to hurt us on purpose. But my mother-in-law didn't know about it. When my daughter got home from school, she was upset. I told her she should tell her grandma what happened. But before she could, my aunt spoke up and said that she hadn't called for her, and that only kids from Christian schools were welcome. When my daughter asked me what a mission school was, I didn't know what to say. A family member was recently accepted into a mission school, which caused a lot of talk in the family. My sister-in-law's son went to a Christian kindergarten. We had heard of family members who didn't know they had ties to these kinds of schools until they started going. We made a different choice. For our daughter, we chose a neighborhood kindergarten and a public grade school. It looked like my sister-in-law used this as another chance to put down my daughter. The frightening gift my daughter got made me very angry, so I hurried to the police station and made it clear how serious the threat was. Even though the police didn't want to get involved at first and said it should be handled as a family problem, luckily a female officer saw how serious the situation was. She understood our fear and promised to visit my sister-in-law that evening with a warning. She knew that threats and violence within families are crimes that need to be reported. I told my angry husband about what happened during the day when he got home. He spoke out against his sister's mean behavior and called his parents, who were holding the Christmas party, but said they didn't know about it. They thought my sister-in-law might have broken in through a back door that wasn't locked while my mother-in-law was busy with other things. The little kids in the family were given the party to plan. After the police officer gave my sister-in-law a harsh warning about what would happen if she didn't change, my in-laws, worried that she might have done something wrong, called a family meeting to talk about it. My sister-in-law and her husband showed up late to the meeting at my in-laws' house. She was clearly upset and not sorry about the police presence, and her husband didn't seem to know what the meeting was for. This situation made the problem seem even worse, which led the family to talk about how to move forward and deal with the root problems. When the husband of my sister-in-law's sister finally found out what his wife had done to our family, he was shocked. Before that, he had no idea how bad things were. When he apologized to us, he seemed truly sorry, which was very different from my sister-in-law, who stayed stubborn and refused to say sorry. Everyone remained silent as she argued that the fact that the police did not arrest her proved her innocence, which was difficult for us to comprehend. Surprisingly, he told her he was going to divorce her. No one saw any outward signs of trouble in their marriage, so this news shocked everyone. He gave a history of putting up with her behavior, which had gone from ignoring housework and child care to making people afraid because she wasn't paying attention. Her concern with how she looked led her to make a lot of moves that weren't necessary. She didn't do these things because it was necessary for her job. Rather, she did them because she was vain and wanted to maintain a certain social status. She often said that their moves were okay because she had high hopes for their son. For example, she tried to get him into fancy kindergartens but failed, which made her feel even worse about herself. In the end, they chose a public school because that's what their son wanted. Even though his wife didn't want to at first, her father supported the choice. The husband's decision to divorce her wasn't a spontaneous one. Rather, it was the result of years of resentment that her most recent abuse had exacerbated. When she heard about the divorce, my sister-in-law was caught off guard. She tried to say sorry, but it was weak and seemed like a last-ditch effort to fix things by saying they were just jokes or pranks. But her actions, especially the mean message she sent to a child, were too serious to be laughed off. This kind of behavior, which could make even adults scared, was unacceptable and showed how trust had been broken in the family forever. I talked to her about it and pointed out how different her actions were from what a caring mom would do. I told her, just because you're a parent doesn't mean you automatically have parental instincts. I meant to show that her behavior was very different from what someone in that job should do. When my husband saw her crying, he told her very clearly that crying wasn't going to help. She shouldn't think that pity will make people forgive her, especially since she is old. She kept crying even though she didn't do anything wrong and wondered why she was being blamed. She even said that the family didn't like me because I was married to her brother, which made it sound like the problem was with me being older than her. The fact that she didn't understand how bad her actions were left us all speechless. My husband was especially shocked that she didn't get it. There was a lot of unsolved stress in the room, so the conversation stopped all of a sudden. Her husband had to take her home. She refused to accept responsibility for her errors, which harmed the divorce process later. It wasn't until her son told her the truth about the Christmas party that things changed, and she reluctantly agreed to the divorce. Her son told his friends about the scary gift exchange he saw, especially the upsetting picture of a stuffed animal that was smashed and stained with red that looked like blood. People at school heard about this statement very quickly, which made both teachers and parents worried. After this news came out, it was hard for my daughter to go back to school. The event And the rumors that connected her to her cousin's story made her feel down. People started to guess what link there was between her absence and what happened at the Christmas party, which showed how one careless action can change the lives of many people. I had thought that everything could have been taken care of quietly so that my daughter could go back to school when she was ready. When her cousin told her about the upsetting event, it wasn't to make her laugh. It was a desperate plea for his mother to stop doing what was hurting him. When her husband saw how these revelations affected people, he felt he had to speed up the divorce process and agreed to her terms just to end their split. By that time, she was really well known in the neighborhood for being scary around kids, which made her friends avoid her and even neighbors dislike her. She felt stuck and shamed, so she saw the split as a way out. She thought that going back to live with her parents would make her feel better, but her ex-husband was adamant about keeping custody of their son, and she didn't fight the decision. Instead, she coldly told her son that she didn't care about him because she was planning to get married again and kids were getting in the way of her plans. Her mean words made her son bravely turn her down. He told her he didn't need her in his life and that he was happier with his dad's care. He also told her not to talk to his cousin. When she went back to her parents' house, she was not allowed to stay, which made things worse for her. She had to deal with the effects of her acts by herself. Her downhill spiral put her in dangerous positions. For basic needs, taking out loans from sketchy sources, and then she disappeared from our lives. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report because they saw her absence as an answer. After that, my daughter got the courage to go back to school, where her cousin is still there to support her and promised to look out for her. Unexpectedly, this hard time has brought our families closer together, especially with my ex-brother-in-law, as we work together to help the kids. In the absence of my sister-in-law, my in-laws have taken care of and loved both of my grandkids with open arms. Now that she's not around, our family is at peace and has built a strong, trusted bond that was missing before. My friend always says, "Oops, I left my wallet at home," whenever we go out, expecting me to foot the bill. It bothers me, but my husband had an idea. So I invited her out, pretending I forgot to buy something. We left the place, and now we're trying out our plan. I hope it works. My name's Addison, and I'm 34 years old. I work part-time while my husband Johnny brings in a good income. Our little family, including our 4-year-old son Cliff, lives comfortably. We recently upgraded from an apartment to a house after saving up some money. That's when I met Susanna, a fellow mom in the neighborhood. She's raising her husband's stepchild, which I found intriguing. Eager to befriend her, I soon realized that Susanna had quite the personality. Despite not knowing her well, we welcomed her into our lives. Today, after my son's gym class, I decided to join in, hoping to integrate into the community. It went well, and I made friends with other local moms who invited me for lunch. We grabbed sandwiches and coffee at a nearby cafe when suddenly Susanna appeared out of nowhere. "Addison, what a coincidence! Are you here for a tea party?" she exclaimed loudly, joining our table without hesitation. We exchanged uncertain glances, but couldn't turn her away, so we ended up having lunch with Susanna. As we were finishing up lunch, we started discussing splitting the bill. Then Susanna chimed in, "Since I just happened to be here, I don't need to pay, right?" We exchanged glances, knowing exactly what was happening. Susanna's habit of dodging payment was rearing its head again. Plus, I didn't order anything, so it wouldn't make sense for me to pay, she argued. We sighed at her reasoning. She always found excuses to avoid paying her share. "But Susanna, you did have something to eat, and you ordered coffee," Addison pointed out. "Can you cover for me this time?" "I didn't plan on joining you guys today and didn't bring any money," Susanna replied. We thought she shouldn't have joined us if that was the case, but no one voiced it aloud. I hesitated, but Susanna insisted stubbornly, "I'll pay you back later." "Come on, Addison. We're neighbors. Let's be good neighbors." "So what? What does that have to do with anything?" I wanted to argue, but Susanna started getting upset, refusing to budge, Not wanting to make a scene, I reluctantly agreed to her promise and ended up paying for both of us. I received sympathetic looks from those around us, feeling uncomfortable. It was just another example of Susanna's behavior since I moved here. The following day, I found myself at Susanna's doorstep, ready to collect the money she owed me from the previous day. I decided to visit her in person to prevent any excuses about not having her wallet. When I asked for the money, Susanna's expression turned sour. Seriously, you came all this way just for $10, Addison? That's surprisingly petty of you, she retorted, clearly reluctant to part with the cash. I had anticipated this reaction, knowing Susanna's track record of not repaying me on numerous occasions before. You've said that before, but you never followed through. You currently owe me over $100. Enough is enough, I stated firmly, feeling a hint of frustration. Susanna's frown deepened, and she glared at me like a stubborn child. However, I was determined not to back down. Today, Susanna's behavior was quite troublesome. Whether it was hitching a ride to the station when I was heading to work or conveniently forgetting her wallet during shopping trips, her antics seemed endless. Confronting her about it only resulted in childish sulking, with her trying to shift the blame onto me by mentioning Johnny's income and implying I was overly frugal. It was beyond frustrating. If only she could act like a normal friend instead of this. On the day of our shopping trip, Susanna hopped into the car ahead of us, quipping, "Did you forget anything, like your wallet?" I responded curtly, "You should check too," before urging Johnny to start the car. With Cliff safely with my parents, we made our way to the wholesale store where we found it jam-packed with shoppers. Despite the chaos, I kept our plan firmly in mind. However, we wouldn't have needed the plan if Susanna simply paid her own way. "Wow, look at all this food! They have such a variety," Susanna exclaimed, enthusiastically piling her cart with bags. "Try to keep your items separate," I suggested, but she waved it off, saying we could sort it out later. Despite my warning, my cart soon overflowed with items. I regretted grabbing a cart in the first place, only intending to pick up a few things. It seemed she had no intention of paying for herself, oblivious to our silent frustrations as she continued browsing without checking prices. As we approached the checkout, Susanna's familiar habits resurfaced. Something seems off." Johnny and I exchanged concerned glances. Susanna fumbled through her purse, looking expectantly at us as if waiting for a prompt. When we remained silent, she couldn't hold back any longer and loudly declared, "Oops, I left my wallet at home." Johnny and I exchanged a knowing look, deciding it was time to put our plan into motion. "Oh, I forgot to grab something," Johnny chimed in as we stood in line. I went along with Johnny's plan, nodding in agreement. Susanna, who had been rummaging through her purse, turned to us. "Could you go get it?" she asked. "But what if you can't find it?" I responded, "I know where it is." "Susanna, can you watch the cart while we go back?" I asked, pushing the cart towards her. Susanna instinctively took hold of it. "Huh?" she questioned. "We'll be quick. You sure you'll be okay? Remember, I don't have my wallet," I reminded her. Susanna reluctantly agreed to wait in line while we went to fetch the forgotten item. Johnny and I exchanged a subtle smile, making sure Susanna didn't notice. We then discreetly hid behind shelves and people, keeping a close watch on her. It seemed our plan was unfolding as expected. How long would she wait? With the cart full of items, she couldn't easily abandon them when it was her turn. Suppressing a mischievous chuckle, we remembered how Susanna always relied on my wallet. There were instances when she would make excuses to leave early if I refused to pay. Recalling this, Johnny suggested we turn the tables on her. However, we had agreed that if Susanna made any attempt to pay, we would let it slide this time. But true to form, the moment she reached the checkout, she announced she'd left her wallet behind, seemingly banking on us to foot the bill. It was a predictable move, especially considering her lingering resentment over the last lunch money. Sensing that we weren't returning, Susanna began to look around nervously, staying in line, perhaps contemplating her next move if we did come back. As the line advanced, Johnny, and I decided to proceed with the next step of our plan. "Sorry, Susanna, but my mom just called with an urgent matter. You know she's looking after the kids and can't leave the house. So we need to head back home," I informed Susanna over the phone. Susanna's voice betrayed her shock and panic. Wait. What about paying? I forgot my wallet too." "Please hurry back and pay before you leave. Nowadays, you can pay with your phone, right? Figure something out. And most of the shopping is yours anyway. If you don't want to pay for a few items, just remove them from the cart. It should be quick since we only picked up 2 or 3 things." Susanna's voice grew increasingly irritated. "I don't have any means to pay. Come back now, or at least leave Johnny here," Johnny interjected, taking my phone with an exasperated tone. "I need to help with the heavy lifting." "Sorry, but you'll have to take a cab back. It's urgent. Or maybe get your husband Phil to pick you up." Susanna was left speechless. We knew she was wary of Phil, as we had heard from other local mom friends about her previous encounters where Phil had sharply scolded her. Despite this, she hadn't learned her lesson and continued her schemes behind Phil's back. That's the situation. If you're unsure how to use your phone to pay, ask the staff. They should be able to assist you, as that register accepts mobile payments, I explained. Susanna clenched her teeth. "Did you set me up?" "Of course not. Isn't it normal to pay for your own things? Why would I set you up?" I responded calmly. Susanna fell silent, visibly frustrated. We ended the call with her and drove off, imagining Susanna causing a scene at the register, sharing a laugh. The following day, Susanna showed up at my doorstep, clearly still upset about what happened the day before. After enduring several rounds of persistent doorbell ringing, I reluctantly answered. There she stood, her face flushed with anger. "It was awful to leave me stranded like that. I demand compensation," she declared, her tone leaving me skeptical. As she launched into a tirade about the events of the previous day, claiming she had panicked and insisting I owed her double the amount, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at her demand. "Did you even pay for our items?" she questioned angrily, seemingly oblivious to the absurdity of her own words. "Why would I pay for your shopping?" I responded incredulously, causing Susanna's fury to intensify. "You only covered your own purchases. Why the sudden anger?" I feigned innocence, but Susanna's frustration reached a boiling point. Being left behind was deeply upsetting. It caused me emotional distress. "You should reimburse me for the shopping, the taxi fare, and the inconvenience. After all, you invited me to join you," she insisted, twisting the story to suit her narrative, frowning at her unreasonable demands, especially her attempt to shift blame onto us by portraying herself as an innocent victim. I couldn't help but feel absurd for even entertaining this conversation. Susanna's audacity left me astounded. Unfazed by my reaction, Susanna issued a threat. "If you refuse to pay, I'll spread rumors about you to the neighbors. Think about the consequences for your fancy house. Pay up if you want to avoid that." Confronted with Susanna's unreasonable ultimatum, I realized it was time to reassess our relationship. Just then, a familiar voice broke the tension. At the sound of it, Susanna's face drained of color, and she swiftly turned around. There stood Johnny and Phil, engaged in conversation as they strolled together. "What's going on?" Phil inquired, sensing the tension in the air. "Oh, it's about yesterday," Johnny began, shooting Susanna a meaningful glance. When I mentioned that, he trailed off, leaving Phil curious. Johnny proceeded to recount the events of their trip to the wholesale store with Susanna and how they had to leave abruptly due to an unforeseen circumstance. "Unfortunately, we didn't manage to buy anything in the end," Johnny concluded, sharing a chuckle with Phil. "That's too bad," Phil remarked with a sympathetic smile, unaware of the tension that had transpired. Turning to Susanna, Phil questioned her. "What's your side of the story?" Suddenly stripped of her previous assertiveness, Susanna stumbled over her words, attempting to formulate a response. Sensing her discomfort, I decided to fill Phil in on Susanna's demands from earlier, noting how deeply hurt she had seemed. I'm genuinely sorry, but asking for compensation and shopping money seems a bit excessive. I expressed, causing Susanna's face to pale. What do you mean? Susanna protested, her voice tinged with desperation. That's not how it is. But wasn't that the purpose of your visit today? Or was there another reason? Phil interjected, his tone curious yet perceptive. Caught off guard by Phil's directness, Susanna lapsed into an uneasy silence, her frustration palpable. Phil, sensing that something wasn't adding up, frowned in suspicion. Noticing Susanna's pleading gaze, she turned to me for support, but I remained silent. Next time, we won't leave you behind. Let's go shopping together again, all right? I suggested with a faint smile, attempting to diffuse the tension. Okay, Susanna replied hastily, her face drained of color as she hurriedly made her exit. Later, Phil confronted Susanna once more. This wasn't the first time such an incident had occurred, and his frustration was entirely justified. He had personally looked into Susanna's actions after receiving multiple complaints from other local moms, which only fueled his anger. Confronting Susanna about her exploitation of others, he discovered her misuse of household funds on luxury items, which had led to discussions of divorce. Desperate to salvage their marriage, Susanna pleaded with Phil, but he felt betrayed and ultimately decided to kick her out for the sake of their child. Eventually, they went through with the divorce proceedings, with Susanna returning to her family's home to assist with farming. With the troublesome influence of Susanna gone, the neighborhood regained its peace. Nevertheless, we maintained our friendship with Phil and continued to offer our support whenever needed.
You're slacking off on the cleaning lately, huh? I can see dust gathering in the corners. Remember, you're at home all day, so do it properly. If I spot dust again, I'm selling your laptop. My husband John's been distant since I got busier with my cartoonist work. When I'm swamped with deadlines, he nags about house chores and even makes me redo them. He expects perfect cleaning since I'm home, but cartooning is my passion. I won't give up. Plus, John's hiding something, and I'm done forgetting him. I'm Ann, 31, and I freelance as a cartoonist. I draw essay-style cartoons and squeeze in work between household chores. When John and I, who's 35, got married 6 years ago, we agreed I'd be a full-time homemaker. 2 years into marriage, I lost both my parents and we moved into my inherited house, as I'm their only child. I didn't want to give up my passion for drawing cartoons, something I've been doing since my student days. I begged John, explaining that while I'm okay with being a housewife, my true dream is to earn a living through my cartoons. Right now, I'm only publishing independent comics, but could I please work from home? He seemed to think it was just a hobby but reluctantly agreed, so I kept drawing after we got married. About 6 months ago, a magazine editor spotted one of my cartoons on my website, and I landed a 2-page, 4-panel cartoon gig in their monthly magazine. Since then, more offers for cartooning and illustrating have come my way, keeping me busy. But when I excitedly shared this with John, his reaction was openly disgusted. You're getting too caught up in this, aren't you? Your main role is supposed to be as a housewife, and your cartoons are just a side thing, right? I bet you're not making much, like pocket money. Why would you say that? I know you're not into cartoons, John, but being a cartoonist has always been my dream. It might be a small gig, but I'm getting paid, so I consider myself a professional. Please don't belittle it. But when I stood up for myself, John got even more upset. You're dependent on me, and you dare to talk back. If you're unhappy, start earning more than me. I was stunned. I typically bring in about $600 a month, but I limit my workload because of him. And then there's John, always nitpicking about the housework, like, you've been slacking on cleaning, huh? I see dust gathering. You're at home all day, so get it together. If I see dust again, I'm selling your laptop. It's like a threat, even though I know he's not serious. But it still scares me, and I end up spending time cleaning instead of meeting deadlines. When I'm busy, he gets even more annoying, pointing out every little thing that needs to be done around the house. Then came the breaking point. John always has dinner right when he gets home from work. That day was no different. He sat down, took a bite of the stew, and exploded. What's this? The carrot isn't cooked properly. Are you trying to mess with me? I come home exhausted, and this is what you serve your husband. I had been lost in my thoughts after meeting a deadline when John's sudden outburst snapped me back to reality. I turned to him just as he grabbed the glass of beer in front of him and splashed it over me. I was shocked. I never imagined I'd have beer thrown at me. The surprise hit me hard because I never saw it coming. I'm sorry. I must have been distracted while cooking. The rest of the meal should be fine, so you can just ignore the carrot. Midway through cooking, I realized I forgot to add the carrots. In my rush, I tossed them into the stew without parboiling them. Even though I had made sure the potatoes were cooked, I completely overlooked the carrots. It was unlike me to make such mistakes, and I felt awful. It seemed John couldn't forgive this slip-up as easily as I had hoped. It's frustrating to have a wife who can't even handle basic household tasks. Maybe I shouldn't have married you, John muttered as he stood up and walked out of the dining room. I hurried after him as he headed towards the bedroom. Where are you going? I need some space until you realize what you've done. What? I stood there stunned as John packed his things into a travel bag and walked out. I tried to follow him, but he hailed a taxi at the nearest station and disappeared. Despite my repeated calls and texts, he didn't respond or read my apologies. Overwhelmed, I collapsed and broke into tears. It was then that I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw Mr. Tom, John's boss. We used to work together before John and I got married, with Mr. Tom being my boss who had mentored me when I first joined the company. Mr. Tom, you smell like alcohol. Were you drinking while cooking? I joked, trying to lighten the mood. Hello. I hate to admit it, but I had a disagreement with John. He replied somberly. That guy can be a bit arrogant sometimes. It's manageable when it's just work-related, but I can only imagine how frustrating it must be living with him. I vented, feeling relieved to share my feelings. Mr. Tom nodded in understanding, flashing his trademark bright smile. That smile had always been a source of comfort to me during tough times at work. We decided to grab a bite at a nearby diner and catch up. So what's got you so upset? He asked kindly. Well, it's my fault. I messed up the cooking today, tried making a stew, but the carrots weren't cooked well, and it upset John. Happens to the best of us. My wife does the same sometimes. When it does, we just roll with it. Getting worked up doesn't help, you know. I appreciated that perspective. A smile crept onto my face as we chatted. So, no argument over drinks then? No, the beer smell? That's from John splashing it on me because of the cooking mishap. I thought I'd dried off at the station, but clearly not, I chuckled. I've had that happen. Even if someone says you smell of alcohol, it's hard to be sure. Mr. Tom chuckled back. What? He splashed beer on you over a small cooking mistake. That doesn't sound like John at all. I never liked the guy, but I never thought he'd do that to his wife. Mr. Tom's voice dripped with genuine indignation, oddly lifting my spirits. Why did you come to the station? You look like you ran here in your apron. Another issue with John? I asked. Yeah, John got strange, called me lazy, and stormed out, saying he wouldn't return until I reflected on my actions. I followed him here, but he took a cab and left. I'm lost, I explained. Mr. Tom's angry expression softened. I can't say for sure now, but I have a bad feeling. I'll look into John. You might want to check the house for anything he left behind, he advised before we parted ways for the day. Following his suggestion, I searched John's usual spots and found a hotel points card in his pants pocket. It had been recently used on a Saturday, a day he claimed to be working. Suspicion grew as I recalled something forgotten. The GPS locator app we installed before marriage. I checked it and found John in an unexpected place, a popular tourist spot known for romantic dates. Convinced he was with someone else, I called Mr. Tom the next day. Mr. Tom, thank you for yesterday. No problem. Is everything all right? Did John not show up for work today? Mr. Tom remained silent for a moment before exhaling heavily. Yes, he's on paid leave for the next 4 days. I suspected as much. I hate to say it, but he's probably... I understand. This helps clear things up. Thank you, I replied. After ending the call, I made a decision and left the house. I had been contemplating my next move. If John ever betrayed me, this is what I would do. Once my task was complete, I dialed another number. Hey, it's been a while, I greeted. The person on the other end responded cheerfully, but as soon as I brought up John, they sided with me. I hung up feeling reassured, believing things would soon take a positive turn. The following day, accompanied by a few individuals, I headed to the location pinpointed by John's smartphone GPS. It led us to a resort hotel near a renowned tourist spot. Currently, he appeared to be outside the hotel, with the GPS indicating he was near the beach. John's face drained of color the moment he laid eyes on me. Seizing the opportunity, I quickly aimed my phone at him and snapped multiple pictures, capturing him alongside a young woman in her early 20s. I had been discreetly photographing them for the past half hour, while John applied suntan oil to the woman, who was clad in a bikini. I allowed them to swim, patiently waiting to gather irrefutable evidence of John's infidelity. Their carefree demeanor or their blatant display of affection didn't shock me. Rather, I felt a sense of relief that they were providing solid proof. What truly rattled John, besides seeing me, was the presence of my in-laws behind me, both regarding him with stern expressions. What's happening here, John? I approached with a forced smile, causing John to stumble backward in the sand and land on his rear. My mother-in-law let out a disappointed sigh. How disgraceful, even for my own son. And who is this woman you've abandoned your wife for? She's useless at home, John blurted out, hastily pointing at me and shifting blame. Is it fair to say she does absolutely nothing? Even if she occasionally skips cleaning, she handles laundry, cooking, and dishes every day, doesn't she? Even I sometimes skip cleaning, and I detest laundry so much I leave it to your father at times. That's because you had a part-time job, right? But it's different with Anne. She's a stay-at-home wife who spends her time drawing and playing. My mother-in-law interjected, her tone firm. John's words fueled my father-in-law's anger. You're completely clueless, he exclaimed, drawing the attention of those around us. Some even seemed ready to capture the scene with their smartphone cameras. Why don't we continue this discussion in a more appropriate setting? I suggested, and everyone agreed. My in-laws and I headed to a nearby restaurant where John and the woman he was cheating with changed from their swimsuits into casual clothes and joined us. Once seated, we listened to John's explanation. I wanted Anne to be a stay-at-home wife, but she picked up this useless hobby of drawing cartoons and neglected her housework. When she refuses to obey me, it's only natural for me to seek a replacement wife, John declared. Mary was quick to respond. Wait, that's different from what you told me. You said you were troubled because of a stalker at your house, and you wanted to escape that reality for a while. I suggested going to the police, but you assured me the stalker would be caught soon. I wouldn't have gone out with you if I knew you had a wife, Mary sobbed, her distress evident. It turned out she was a college student who had met John on a dating app. Attracted to an older man, she agreed to date him, only to realize she had been deceived. I'm really sorry. I won't contact John again. Consider this a lesson learned, and I'll be more careful next time. Mary apologized, bowing deeply to me and my in-laws before showing us the screen where she deleted John's number. Leaving some money for her coffee on the table, she hurriedly left. I shot a glare at John, who looked stunned by Mary's departure. It's only natural that I have my own feelings and circumstances. I'm not some robot you can manipulate. Cheating just because things aren't going well is despicable, I admonished. Before John could respond, my father-in-law interjected, his tone firm. You still seem too content, John. But who's the one working and providing for Anne? You should respect me as the breadwinner. John trembled with anger, but my father-in-law addressed him calmly. You're acting like a child. Just because things aren't going your way, you're throwing tantrums like a toddler. Learn to accept reality. There's nothing more to say. With that, my in-laws stood up, settled the bill, and made their way to the register. Left alone with John, I found myself at a loss for words. John, I've been offered a serial comic strip in a magazine, I announced. John's demeanor shifted completely, and he looked at me with surprise. Oh, congratulations. Because of this opportunity, I can no longer be the stay-at-home wife you want. I'm sorry, but I'm tired of being with you, John. I want a divorce. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. You can pursue your comics, and I'll help with the housework. I won't be arrogant anymore, John pleaded, tears welling in his eyes. But I couldn't bear to look at him any longer. I'm sorry, but that's not the issue anymore. You looked down on me, didn't you? I believed marriage was about equality, but you saw yourself as superior because you were the provider, didn't you? Maybe I did, but I changed. I promise I won't make you suffer anymore. Please don't talk about breaking up, John begged. I've made the decision to sell the house we lived in. I have a relative who works in real estate, and they've agreed to buy it from me. There's still some paperwork and arrangements to finalize, so it won't happen immediately, but it'll be at a lower price than if we went through a broker. It's my house, and I have the right to do as I please with it, don't I? I want to end our relationship as soon as possible. I'm planning to leave tomorrow, and you should find somewhere else to stay as well. With that, I rose from my seat and headed for the exit. Unlike the day John left, he was now desperately chasing after me. However, when I got into the car, my father-in-law, who was behind the wheel, swiftly drove off. As I slammed the door shut, I saw John running after us, tears streaming down his face, but soon he disappeared from view. Afterward, it seemed John didn't believe what I had done. Upon his return from his trip and discovering the house empty of my belongings, he called me, his voice filled with anguish. I reluctantly answered the phone. Why did you sell the house? It was our home, wasn't it? Why are you saying such things? It's the house I inherited from my parents, remember. But I should have some rights to it too, shouldn't I? In fact, there are no automatic inheritance rights for spouses when it comes to property. If you understand, please leave the house as soon as possible. Expect a call from the lawyer regarding alimony and divorce. Don't try to avoid it, okay? I stated firmly before ending the call. Later, it seemed that John faced criticism from Mr. Tom for taking paid leave to go on a trip with his mistress. While there was no requirement to disclose the reason for taking time off, he was interrogated for betraying his wife. John faced difficulties at work, feeling ostracized by his colleagues and uncomfortable every day. Additionally, his in-laws had cut ties with him. John attempted to return to his in-laws' house, but they turned him away. After paying alimony, John depleted his savings and began accumulating debt. He now resides alone in a modest apartment, struggling to manage household tasks and leading a chaotic life. I later learned these details from Mr. Tom, but I felt no sympathy. Meanwhile, I settled into a tidy studio apartment and focused on creating drafts for my serialized comic strip. It's an anthology-style comic, drawing inspiration from various people's experiences. The next story I plan to illustrate revolves around marital infidelity, and I'm contemplating using John's situation as material.